This is a 2013 Yamaha XJ6. It is a 600cc learner-approved inline 4 motorcycle, and I've spent the better half of the day taking it out through the city into the mountains to put it through its paces. If you're new to the channel, my name's Kwackajack, and I ride and review all different types of motorcycles here in Brisbane, Australia. And when it comes to this one, I'm kind of torn because there's some things that I love about it and some that I hate. But at the end of the day, I think there's two specific types of people it would be great for. So before I tell you who that is, let's go out for a ride to see what it's like.
Oh, nice. Alright guys, welcome back. Today we're on a 2013 Yamaha XJ6. This is the LAMS model, so it is restricted in its power output. The original has a 600cc inline 4 motor that pumps out 76 horsepower and around 59 to 60 newton meters of torque. This restricted model drops that down to around 47 to 48 horsepower to keep in line with the LAMS or A2 power restrictions. And I've already ridden it out here through Brisbane City, and I've got some thoughts. There's some things that I noticed straight away that I really like and some that I absolutely hate. But I want a chance to open it up, put it through the twisties before I start giving you my verdict on it. Now the closest competitor that I can think of off the top of my head would be the Honda CB650R. That's also got an inline 4 around the same size. It's restricted here in Australia, and I really loved that thing. Thought it was a hoot to ride. You can really pick these things up for a great price at the moment. This particular model has got around 35,500 Ks on it. Is going for $5,990 and comes with a Leo Vince pipe, which you can probably hear. Let's start with the positives, right? Because there are some good things happening here. As soon as I got on, the first thing I noticed was that it's quite comfortable. You know, normally Yamahas of this era, for me, the seats have just been not great at all, but this one is surprisingly comfortable. I'm also quite a fan of its dimensions. You know, it's got a very low seat, only 785 millimeters, so it's really easy to get on and off of. I'm surprised every time I swing a leg over that I'm not stretching further. The ergos are also quite comfortable. You're in this sort of regular naked position, sort of sit down and pray. And it was just very, very comfortable to sit on and ride through the city. The second thing that I noticed once I started to pull away was the engine is really smooth. You can tell immediately that it's an inline 4 just through that revvy nature. And the way that the power is sort of delivered. The engine in this bike was actually originally from an R6, and you know, it was sort of detuned and tweaked for sort of lower down torque, and this one has obviously had that done again to make it compliant with the LAMS category. But you can just sort of tell that there's, you know, something special here. The problem that I have is that it's just very hard to get that magic to show. Another positive that I'm noticing up here in the twisty is that it is actually surprisingly well handling. I wouldn't call it sharp and I wouldn't call it agile, but it just seems to have this very predictable way of turning into a corner that I'm a fan of. You know, it's not necessarily a light motorcycle. This non-ABS version weighs 205 kilos wet, so you know, it's on the heftier side. But once you're moving and going around a corner, you really will have a hard time noticing that. It's also pretty quick feeling off the line. I noticed that in the city, where I was surprised at how rapidly it took off from the lights. Here we go, let's see how it handles this. Very good. Here we go. Nice. But let's move on to the negatives, because I don't know if you just saw that, but that's my main one. I have a huge gripe with this bike, and it is the throttle. My goodness, is it shallow. I'm talking like Jack Black shallow Hal level. That's me fully twisting it. Look how much movement. I'll show you, right? That's it. That's all you've got. There's literally about this much movement in your wrist. And it's kind of a shame. I know they probably had to do that to get it to fit into this LAMS bike category and restrict it, but God, you got an inline 4 underneath you. They're designed to rev, they're designed to breathe, and it's just a bit much, you know. I guess for me, one of the beauties of having an inline 4 is really revving it and feel it climb as your wrist is pinned, but you know, that's not really something you can do here. We'll try and open it up a little bit further along the road where it opens up and see if I can get its legs going, but right now it's really just a shame that that is all I've got. In saying that, when I was in the city, I didn't really notice it because it is so quick off the line, that initial sort of jump. You only really notice it when you're on a longer stretch of tarmac and you want to get to those higher speeds. You know, I did mention that weight at 205 kilos, and again, when you're moving, you really can't tell, but at a standstill, when I picked the bike up when I first sat on it, it's definitely noticeable. So another negative that I have about it is that there isn't any ABS on here. Now this is a 13 model, and some of the 13 models do have ABS, so if you are looking for one, I'd recommend going for one of those if you can find it. But as a learner rider, I think it's something you should have. You know, I've already felt the rear wheel lock once or twice for me, which isn't a big deal for an experienced rider, but if it's your first motorcycle and you don't know what you're doing, and you get into the sort of limit of how much power you're allowed to have, it can be dangerous. As I'm riding this, I'm trying to think of, you know, what sort of demographic would really get the most out of and enjoy this bike, because there's a lot to like here. And I can probably think of one or two different ones, and we'll discuss that at the end, who I really would recommend this bike for. Man, it's very comfortable to ride. It's not got the fanciest suspension on it, and you know, I think when I start pushing it harder up a little bit further, we'll see how it handles it. But going over just regular roads, it is a plush ride. In terms of vibration so far as well, they're definitely there. I mean, it's an inline 4. I can feel them sort of through my hands and the foot pegs, but they're not too bad. Yeah, as you rev it, it's definitely mainly through the hands and the feet that you'll feel it, but it's nothing extreme, nothing uncomfortable. Alright, let's give it a proper go. See, I just want a bit more on that throttle. Ah, another thing I haven't mentioned yet. There is no gear indicator, so if you are new to riding, it's something you just have to keep in mind is where you are in the range. See, this is an unsealed road and it's very comfortable on here at the moment. Not super impressed with the brakes so far. A little bit soft. They're doing the job, but nothing to write home about. I'll give them a proper testing. Oh, felt a little wobble there in the rear end. There has been once or twice when I've sort of been going through a corner and it's felt like maybe it's kind of dipped a little bit, or it's given me a little wobble, and it just sort of shows that, look, while this suspension is perfectly fine, it's up to the task, it's nothing extravagant, you know, it does have its limits. I think so far it's handling what I've thrown at it pretty well. Ooh, let's have a quick look around. So far it's been doing a pretty good job. So we've just heard the fan come on, and I've noticed a fair bit of heat coming from it a few times as I've been riding, especially in the city. Normally I'm not really a fan of the styling of these older bikes, but I don't mind this one. Also, considering that it's, what, 12 years old now, this is a 2013 model, it's still in pretty good nick. There's no big scratches. The paint's holding up pretty well. You know, you can see a few little spots here and there, but overall it's in pretty good nick. I also like that you've got the grab handles on the back and this sort of big seat. I've been able to scooch back and forth quite comfortably, and I think, you know, if I were to put my girlfriend or a pillion on the back there, they wouldn't have too bad of a time. Quite big foot pegs too. So you see what I mean? I've been stopped here for about 10 minutes and it's a warm day. It's like 28, 29 degrees and says the bike's at 97. Not unbearable, but definitely gets warm. Considering we're on a 200 kilo plus bike, it's pretty easy to maneuver. I can't believe how short that is. That's all I've got. All right, heading back down and we're gonna test the acceleration and braking. Let's start with the rear brake and the front. try them together. Yeah, I mean, I'm not blown away by them. They're okay. Used together, they will stop you. I'm more of a fan of the rear one than I am the front. The front's pretty weak, if I'm honest, but they'll do the job. Yeah, I felt the rear end get a little unsettled on these longer sweepers a couple of times. That's it, I want more. You know, it's still a pretty quick feeling motorcycle. Even though you've only got this much play in the throttle, like, it'll still haul. It just takes longer to get there. I don't know, I'm kind of torn with how I feel about this bike. I know it's a LAMS bike, so it's going to be restricted. I wish they just gave us a bit more of that top end, you know? It honestly, it feels pretty weak up top. I'm really most impressed by it off the line, which is not normally something that an inline 4 is good at. And look, it's a similar situation that I had on the Honda, although that one did give me more play in the throttle. So even though it had the same issue where it sort of cut the legs off up the top, I still felt like I was sort of pinning it, you know? I'm trying to think of where it's felt the best so far. And I think, honestly, it was probably in the city or in those tight twisties on the way up here. Those longer sweepers, they were fine, but it definitely didn't feel at home there. Now, in terms of what you get with the bike as well, there isn't much. What you do get is this sort of LCD dash here. I'm not a huge fan of how that wobbles about. The only thing I wish it did have was a gear indicator. Again, if you're a learner rider, you'll survive, but it's just nice to have. Alrighty guys, let's pull off to the side for my final thoughts and to chat about who I reckon this bike would be great for.
Alright, so what are my final thoughts on the XJ6? I'll break it down into a pros and cons. First up on the good list is the price. You're going to find some banging deals here. This is a 2013 model. It's got about 35,500 Ks on it, and you can pick it up for $599. For a 600cc naked in the LAMS class, that's an inline 4, that's pretty good. Next up is the engine. You can tell that it's got the makings of magic in there. You know, I mentioned that it was originally derived from an old R6, and while we've come a very, very long way from that, it's still sort of got the faintest hint of it. It's smooth and torquey and has good low to mid-range punch. There are some vibrations, definitely through the hands and the feet, but it's nothing extreme. It's a lot of fun going light to light, and I think up to around 100 Ks, it feels really punchy. Comfort and ergonomics is another one. It has got a very low seat height of only 785 millimeters, and that means that it's really unintimidating for people of all different shapes and sizes. You can really easily flat foot this bike. And even though the seat is really low, I don't feel cramped on here. I'm just over 6 foot and my legs are fine. I also reckon you do well with pillions on here because the rear seat is pretty decent and you've got grab handles. Build quality is also solid overall. This is a 12-year-old bike and the paint still looks pretty decent. Everything feels solid, and besides one or two little spots here or there, you know, I'm pretty happy with how it's holding together. The handling was a lot of fun. You know, it is a heavy bike at 205 kilos, but once moving, you can't really tell. It feels balanced and it's great in the city and through smaller, tighter twisties. It's a very unintimidating and safe feeling bike that you can still have some fun on. All right, last positive that I'll mention is the tank size. We're coming in at 17 liters, which is this much for the Americans. For a LAMS bike, I think that's pretty good. And you know, it could make a great commuter. Okay, on to the cons, and we'll start with the biggest one by far for me. It has got to be that throttle. It has got to be the shortest travel I have ever experienced in a bike. Seriously, you probably got only like 10%. Now, around town riding, you probably won't notice it, but once you open it up and bring it to a place like this, you'll really just want to keep going, but it won't let you. The LAMS tuning also restricts that top end feel quite a lot, and You know, I can feel that the bike's got way more to give and I'm just not getting it. To me, it just feels overly restrictive and kind of ruins the feel. It's kind of disappointing when you've got such a great engine in there that just can't breathe. The brakes are also adequate at best. There's no ABS on this model, which is a bit of a bummer, and by modern day standards, they are weak. It's probably also in part due to the weight, which we've mentioned a few times now. You know, once you're moving, you'll forget about it, but at a standstill, you can really feel it. I know I said it handled great, but when you're going through some faster sweepers, you can definitely tell the suspension is more on the basic side. It is soft. You haven't really got any adjustability besides a little bit at the back, and I felt it get unsettled at times. But look, overall, I think the pros do outweigh the cons, and there is something here. It kind of feels like a safe, smooth all-rounder. It's not overly exciting, but it'll probably be easy to live with. And that means that I think it would be great for two types of riders. Now, the first one would be someone that's still on their learners, but perhaps started on a really small bike, perhaps a 125 to 300 cc's. You know, you've outgrown that and you want a bit more grunt. This would be a fantastic first big bike. There's gonna be no drama, you're gonna have much more performance than what you were on, and you can sort of learn with this one a bit more. The second type of rider that I think this would be fantastic for is a returning one. Someone that's been out of the game for 15, 20 years and now wants to dip their toes back in the water. This will feel really familiar for those types of riders because it's pretty much the same type of bike. There's not a whole lot of electronic aids, there's no fancy dash, there's not even any ABS. It is an uncomplicated bike to start back on, and it's got a good amount of power for those wanting to sort of get their kicks. You've got the buzziness through the hands, you've got that sort of raw feeling from the engine, and I think it'll satiate those that are looking to get that fix again. And then if you do love it, you can upgrade again onto something bigger and more modern. This is really gonna be a cheap, uncomplicated way to get yourself back into the riding world. But there you have it. That's my take on the Yamaha XJ6. What do you reckon? Have you got one? Have you ridden one? Do you agree with my take? Let me know down in the comments below. And if you do enjoy these videos, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe for all the future ones. I also want to take a second to thank our mates over at Team Moto Kawasaki in Bowen Hills. They're the guys that lent me this bike. If you're in the market for a new or used motorcycle, or are looking to trade yours in, make sure to go in and say hey and tell them that I sent you. But thanks for watching. Until next time, see ya.